All right. I hope I don't get COVID, but if I do, I'll ask you what that alternative medicine is.
Josh,
Yes.
Linus isn't joining us. He's got COVID.
Oh
Oh no.
no.
She just got it. So we are maintaining separate rooms.
Oh no.
So
He can
sorry.
he can die. He can dial in from the other room.
I know, I think he was going to try.
I'm just teasing. He probably did to sleep.
I was gonna
Goodness
say he probably
gracious.
doesn't feel like it.
He's been
Yeah.
sleeping for the last couple of days.
Well, I am just trying to ensure that we are uh, live and in person. And it sounds as if we are ready to rock and roll. All right. Greetings and salutations, my dear beloved friends. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Let's get this party started. Um, just a couple of housekeeping thoughts. Again, I bring to your attention that tonight is our last evening venturing into the booklet of Strength to Love by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so I thank you for attending to that these last couple of months. And I'll talk more about our pivot towards the end of our time tonight. Let's see. And aha, here comes our next admission. Let's see, admit. And if you are planning to continue on with the Armchair Theologians, I want to encourage you to go ahead and register so that I can update the email roster appropriately. I'm not going to carry over this email roster. So again, please, if you're going to continue on, please register for the next class appropriately. I've received the ones from John and from Linus and Luis. So if you want to continue on, please, and maybe did Kitty, maybe you signed one up? I don't remember.
Thought I did, but I'll go back and do it again.
Great. And so please make sure you do. Go ahead and order your book. I'll talk more about it as we come to the end of our time again tonight. And if you think that I'm going to forget talking about it, draw my attention to it so that way I don't forget to talk about it at the end of our time again tonight. That being said, let's have our opening prayer. I shall open it. O God, our eternal Father, we praise you for gifts of mind with which you have endowed us. Teach us, we pray, how to use this great gift of reason and imagination so that it shall not be a curse, but a blessing. Grant us visions that shall lift us up out from worldliness and sin into the light of your own holy presence. Through Jesus the Christ, we pray. Amen. So we
Amen.
shall do some introductions this evening. We, on our Colbert questionnaire journey to know each other, have arrived at the question of, have you ever asked someone for their autograph? And for those of you who participated in the class this morning, some of you have already given your answer, but we will go ahead and do another round, and maybe you have a different answer today, this evening. But we just want to we just don't want to do the full-blown story of how you got the autograph, but whose autograph did you acquire? And that would be great. So we will go by invitation, and I'm going to start off with Matt. And so Matt, if you will introduce yourself and answer the question. Um, have you ever asked someone for their autograph?
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Matt Russell. I'm sad to have missed the last two sessions. I just had to be out of town for some sad family business, unfortunately. I'm happy to be back. I have asked somebody for their autograph, and that was for the initial run for president was Barack Obama when he came to Austin, and he was at Town Lake. We used to be called Town Lake, and he gave a speech, and he was a little unknown at the time, so I was able to get up close to him and ask for his autograph.
Right. And
My
now
one
you
brush
can
with
invite-
fame.
That's awesome. And now
Yeah.
you can invite whomever according to
Yes.
the list.
I will go with John.
Thank you, Matt. So I'm John Seaman, and my answer from this morning was yes, I have asked somebody for their autograph. It was Satchel Paige, but I will also add for those of us who were there this morning that my dad was a big collector of autographs back in the 50s and 60s. And he sent all of them to Scotty and myself a couple years ago. And the most unique one I thought in his collection was he had 2 or 3 different autographs from Helen Keller.
Wow.
Whoa,
Oh yeah,
that's pretty.
perfectly legible, like
Wow,
typewriter font.
that's cool.
Yep.
Wow.
Okay, cool. All right, you invite somebody.
I will pick Julie Pratt.
Yes. My name is Julie Pratt. I think I know everybody now. And when I was in college, before he became so famous, Stevie Wonder gave a concert at my college. So that was my autograph.
Cool.
Okay, I call on Carla.
I'm Carla Young, and I used to have a little autograph book, so I have lots of little autographs when I was a kid, but I played softball when I was like 10, and Jim Sundberg came to the bank in my town, catcher of the Rangers, and I stood in line forever with my little glove, my little baseball, and had him sign my glove and my baseball and my book, and the Dallas Morning News was there and took a picture of us and put it
Whoa.
in the paper. It
Oh,
was
neat.
awesome. I was trying to find the picture. I can't find it's somewhere. I have it. And I picked Kitty.
Well, wouldn't you know it? Go ahead, Kitty.
Kitty Kosachata, and I have never asked anyone for an autograph, nor been in the presence of fame.
Oh, Josh is amazed.
But I have been in touch with an accredited author. There we go, author.
And that person is
You.
oh,
Oh.
okay. And Luis, I know you don't have your camera on, but have you ever asked anyone for their autograph?
How do I turn it on?
If you wiggle your mouse in the bottom left, you'll see a little camera where it says start video. There you go.
Okay. Okay, Louise Nanolavicius, and the one and only autograph I asked for was from the author Irving Stone. He was the author of Exodus and Passions of the Mind on Sigmund Freud.
Okay.
Mm.
I've never been a collector of autographs, but I've been around some famous folks, in the presence of, and I will tell you that I was at a Comic-Con in Austin after I had just moved to Austin 10 years ago, and I'd never been to a Comic-Con before, and it was a panel of all of the captains of Star Trek, from William Shatner, what's his name? Jean-Luc Picard guy. What's his name? Who did Jean-Luc Picard, Captain Picard. Who was that?
Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart. So it was William Shatner, Patrick Stewart, Scott Bakula. I mean, it was an amazing panel. There was about 3,000 to 4,000 people in this room. and there was going to be Q&A. And I love Scott Bakula because I loved Quantum Leap, and I had gotten in line to ask Scott Bakula a question. And it was a 45-minute wait. So they were hemming and hawing and, giving their pitch. And after 45 minutes, I got to the point where I could, to the microphone, to ask my question. And I asked my question, and William Shatner had misunderstood. He thought that I was asking him the question, and he just assumed, and he answered it with some arrogance and bravado. And my response was, well, that's nice and all, but that question wasn't for you. I was asking Scott Bakula. Now,
Man,
I didn't realize the context of the offense I had just lobbed to William Shatner in a room full of Trekkies who were very upset that I had just offended their God. And I was very much got pitchforked and torched for that. And to the point that Scott Bakula said, I'm not touching that one. And I didn't get my answer.
what was the question?
I don't remember. I don't remember. I mean, it's just a dark memory in my life now. Because I pretty much got ran out of the room. Moving on. So in our final session tonight, we were looking at 8 and 9, and we didn't complete the whole of the book. And what I hope that you will do is that you will continue reading through the remainder of the chapters, because I think there is a lot of value and depth. I don't know if in these chapters you have encountered them the way that I have, with a highlighter and a pen, marking it up and writing and making notes and just, highlighting half of each page and, and thinking through them and what they mean. Maybe you just got big old question marks next to every other sentence. I don't know. But I hope that you will continue reading and finish out the book and the remainder of the chapters, maybe one a week, because I think that there still is, as why I selected the book, a lot of value in these sermons for us now, 60 years later after they have been written. And on our final one to unpack, I feel like chapter 8 is a great swan song sermon for us to have a conversation around. And it's not necessarily the easiest topic, but I think out of the ones that we have chewed on, this might have been one of the easier ones to engage from a reader's perspective, and perhaps maybe a little easier for us to chew on and to discuss. So out of the gate, the sermon title was called "The Death of Evil Upon the Seashore." And so, and he quoted from Exodus 14:30, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. So just in that alone, the title and that one verse, where do we know, and from what part of the Bible do we know, or what story in the Bible do we know that king is referencing?
When the Red Sea closed in on the Egyptians as they tried to follow Moses and the Jews through the parted waters.
What is that whole story about? I mean, that's one snapshot. It's a Polaroid of a larger story. What's that bigger story of what all of that is about in Exodus?
The captivity of Israel.
That's right. The liberation of the Israelites from captivity. So this is go down, Moses, way down to Egypt land, tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. Right? And and so we've made it through. We've made it from Passover to the 10 plagues of the Egyptians. Pharaoh said, take your people, take your stuff, hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more, hit the road, Jack. Uh, Charlton Heston grabs up all the Israelites, loads up his rod, starts leading the people out of Egypt. They're making their way out. Pharaoh hardens his heart again. He gets really upset and he says, you know what? Tapui Hui with those Israelite people, rallies up all the Egyptians and says, let's go get them, boys. And like an old Western lynch mob, starts chasing them down. The Egyptians get to their embanked right next to the Red Sea, and they realize, oh darn it, we're in, we got a little problem here. And Moses sends a carrier pigeon to God, or a smoke signal, or an email, however it is that it works. God says, load up your rod, and the parts the sea. The Israelites make their way across the parted waters of the Red Sea. They get across safely. And once the last person gets across safely, there's no need for the waters to be parted anymore. And then what happens? The waters come back, and the Egyptians who had been in pursuit, well, we talked about gravity this morning and water, and many of the Egyptians died that day, and now we have a death on one shore, life on the other. Hence, the death of evil upon the seashore, and um, the contrast between the evil and death on the Egyptian side of that seashore, and the Israelites and life on the other side. So now we have this setup of what we're getting into. And he opens this up, and he even lays out from the beginning in this opening paragraph, is anything more obvious than the presence of evil in the universe? Well, that question is enough that I would tell you that we could have a whole conversation and not read anything else but from that one question alone. But put a pin in it. He writes, it's nagging, evil's nagging, prehensile tactical tentacles project into every level of human existence. We may debate the origin of evil, but only a victim of superficial optimism would debate its reality. Evil is stark, grim, and colossally real. So I want to lead us off with this idea of what is your opinion on the nature of evil? Or, as King wrote, is anything more obvious than the presence of evil in the universe? Is it in your mind that there is no evil in the world, is basically what he's saying. It's a rhetorical question is what he's asking. And being that that is a rhetorical question, I would ask you, before digging into the meat of what King is going to unpack in 3 sections, coming into this sermon, what's your base opinion on the nature of evil? Where do you stand on this concept of the nature of evil?
The
Well, I
nature
think
of the universe is to assist goodness in its struggle with evil.
So there's a word that missed out on that. The nature of the universe is to what evil?
Assist goodness
To assist goodness
in its struggle with evil.
in its struggle. And are you reading that from somewhere, or is that what you wrote down?
Well, this is a phrase that I picked from the book.
Okay. Well, what's Luis's opinion on evil prior to today, prior to the reading this chapter? What have you always thought about the nature of evil? Is it something supernatural, or man-made?
No, I don't think it's supernatural.
Yeah, what do you think about evil, Luis? What have you always thought?
I don't know. It's inherent to anyone.
Okay. Good. Anybody else? I'm not going to tell you whether there's a right or wrong answer.
I've always thought it was a learned behavior, that no baby is born evil. A baby may be born with inherent mental illness that leads to evil if untreated, maybe later. But I think most children are born neutral and would tend toward good if life allowed that. But sometimes circumstances and ambition and people's experiences turn them evil.
Okay. What else has been your opinions on evil?
I definitely know there's evil. I don't know whether somebody is born evil or turns evil. I don't think that at the end of the day that matters. But I've seen it. I don't think that it's the most obvious thing. Like King says, I think that opening line is designed to catch your attention. Maybe, wake the congregation up, after a nice song by the choir or something when he starts preaching. But I do think that a lot of times good in people is defined by how they struggle or counter evil. So someone like, to use an example like Gandhi, I think that a lot of people are good day to day, but the ones that become famous for being good are because of their struggles and successes against evil, if that makes sense. I mean, you could see there's probably a lot of good people walking around every day, and you run into them, and you're like, oh, that guy's a good guy. But they're not famous for being good unless you are, going against evil, whatever that evil is.
Okay. Anybody else? What's your thoughts on evil? What's your opinion on the nature of evil? What has been your opinion on the nature of evil?
I believe it exists. Some obvious ways of evil we recognize, but I think there are other circumstances that happen that are more subdued that we don't realize. Sometimes we get caught up in it, but I think our faith, our Christianity brings awareness then against it.
Say some more about that, Kitty. What are these circumstances?
Well, I know from working in the hospital, and when I'm holding down a teenage girl that was high on drugs, the evil is the drug. She was tempted, she took it, and then hopefully, we treat her, of course, in the emergency room. Don't always know what the outcome was, but you hope that she did a recovery and then, became good again or aware of the evil of the drug.
Okay.
I got thinking after you asked this, Josh, about a book by Hannah Arendt called The Banality of Evil. And so a lot of times people think about, evil being personified, Hitler, Stalin, people like that, the obvious ones. But the premise of the book, Banality of Evil, talked about how the entire German country in World War II basically allowed the Holocaust to happen, either by ignoring what was going on or just being a small cog in the bigger machine that was, ultimately resulted in the stuff that went on in the Holocaust. And so that, I think, King gets to some of that when he talks about colonialism and institutions of slavery and things like that. Evil situations and how can they exist for so long.
And no pressure to speak, but Carla or Matthew, do y'all want to offer anything? There's no pressure.
I've always thought of evil as, evil's exactly the opposite of good. And after reading this chapter, because I don't feel like there's a whole lot of in between. It's either one or the other. It's good or evil. Things are good or evil. Evil can come in lots of forms. But after reading this, when it talks about good always wins over evil, so they're not equal in their ability to affect things, to me. So I think.
Say that again. They're not equal in their ability to affect things.
So like evil eventually peters out. That's probably maybe not the right word, but it seems like to me, that's always what I felt like.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Because people are things or situations, if they're just let to be, then they continue to be evil. But I've always had the opinion that someone good or something good can always overcome that. Sort of.
I get you. Okay. Thank you. And Matthew, again, no pressure. It's never share or die, but do you want to offer anything or we want to move on?
Well, since you put it that way, I can share. I think that I've thought about, I come at this from, I was thinking about something that John said from that Eichmann and Jerusalem piece, the banality of evil. If I were to even be more literal, back up to the title, like the death of evil is very provocative as a title to this sermon, the death of evil, and what is it that dies? We're the things that die in this world. And I thought about this a lot. Evil isn't a person, a person isn't evil or a thing isn't evil. Who am I to say that? I think of evil as something that is more of a diminishment of possibility. There's a famous, I'm sorry, I'm an academic, so I think about these things. There's a famous speech in Hamlet where Hamlet is talking about, oh, what a wonder is humanity, how angelic an aspect is man, and the way that we have been created and been given the gift of faith and the gift of life through the church. Evil is a diminishment of that. And I think I was thinking again about another piece of literature, which is Dante's great Divine Comedy, thinking about the afterlife. And the first passage of that is, I found myself in a dark wood, lost. And I think evil is that loss of a sense of the human in us. It's diminishment of in whose image we were created. So I realize in saying that I have a very privileged perspective in being able to say that, but I think that, evil isn't a thing. Somebody isn't evil. The thing isn't evil, but it's the diminishment of something that we are able to perceive because it's a part of our created universe.
Love it. First off, I don't know who tipped you off, but you're always going to get extra points when you quote Hamlet and Dante.
I know who my teacher is. That's okay.
Wow. Somebody tipped you off.
Well, I held back my Milton quote for you too, Josh. I wasn't going to say that one.
Let's not go there, or we're going to have to start dating. That being said, I think, and I appreciate all of your perspectives, and I think it's also fair to say, and I want to make sure that I bring this to the table as well, because we didn't elevate this, there are also perspectives of evil that we didn't elevate. But I do want to make sure that I also bring it to the table that there are opinions on the nature of evil, that there are supernatural forces of evil. People hold this idea that there is a force of evil that exists in our world, just as there is a force of good. And we, in pop culture, we would call it the dark side, right? The dark side of the force, and then the force itself, like in Star Wars. And there is this ever-present darkness that you can tap into, this force of badness, this force of evil that is ever present and powerful that you can tap into, and you can choose to grab into and to leach into, and its power you can wield and to accomplish all of these dastardly deeds. And then of course, on all of those tales, the trick is what? Is that it always overpowers you, and you always falter to it. It is you're always the fool who in your folly of trying to wield evil. But just the idea that there are faith traditions, even in Protestant Christianity, there are faith traditions that believe in this kind of this supernatural force of evil. It makes for great horror shows, and I like horror movies. I like horror television shows. And so I would, to be fair to the overall perspective of this, I would say that there definitely are, and there may very well be people in our pews that may hold some aspect of that as well. Um, I think I personally have um, uh, I moved away entirely from a concept of the devil and Satan probably the better part of 20 years ago. And, theologically, I myself don't hold any kind of concept of the devil, Satan, or hell. That's not something that has been in my doctrine, my personal doctrine, for the better part of 20 years. And as such, I don't hold any kind of concept of there being some sort of force, that there is a puppet master of evil that manipulates those things, that the evil that exists in this world and what is revealed to us as the most obscene, profane horrors of the world that are beyond our imaginations are things that um, are things that are the result of the depths of human sin that we just fail to that we fail to comprehend, that we can fail to comprehend. I have not served in the military, but my family has. I know that even in their experiences, that they have seen things that they cannot utter to repeat and bear to repeat because of what humans have done to each other that have represented evil. I know that my military colleagues, excuse me, uh, my college classmates who are in the police and law enforcement, and when I have done ride-alongs with them, as they have shared with me the realities of the world, of the cities that we live in, and the evil that they had encountered as a result of the people that live in the city with us, is the depth of human depravity as a result of sinful acts that we can hardly comprehend. These are the things that I believe of where human sin can go to, and that there, we may think that there's a bottom, but the bottom is something that we can hardly fathom. And that is what I think leads us into this idea of, the horrors of, the Holocaust, but then also in hindsight, the horrors of our silence contemporarily with the Holocaust. Because it wasn't just the German people, right? It was also the United States saying, we're not going to do anything. I mean, the contemporarily, the United States overtly had said, we're not getting engaged in that
Yeah,
until it was much later.
yeah. And it was
Uh,
also the church. The
and it
church
was
didn't intervene either.
That's right.
Christian church. It was the same thing in South Africa with apartheid. It was the same thing with the Christian church with this with slavery pre-Civil War. It was the same thing with the Christian church in the era of Jim Crow, the segregation. And I mean, it's the era of the Christian church contemporarily in a variety of ways today on a variety of topics, who chooses to silence its voice in the face or keep its voice silent in the face and in the fear of a variety of different things. So I can get off on a box, and I don't want to do that because I don't want to usurp the important person of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And but I felt like when he says that evil is stark, grim, and colossally real, I think what he has done in this opening paragraph, much like what John said, is, hey, sit up straight, y'all, buckle up, because we're gonna, it's about to get heavy in here, and it's gonna get heavy quick. And he really wanted to call out those who who carry a superficial optimism, because we certainly have those in our world as well. And to be mindful about the ways in which we may be dismissive of evil in in our world.
But Josh, what's interesting about that, he says a victim of optimism.
A victim of superficial. And so what do you want to point out about that?
A victim of superficial optimism. I mean, what does he mean by that?
Yeah, if you are someone who is an embracer of or lives as a one who lives with superficial optimism, then you are a victim, because you are one who um, uh, is I think that I would interpret that in a way of your soul, for lack of a better word, is being injured. Your nature of your faith is being injured. Your encounter with the experience of God is in some way injured or victimized by that superficial optimism.
It's almost like a blindness, he's suggesting,
Correct.
an affliction, yeah,
Yeah.
of
I
optimism.
remembered when I read that victim thing, Matthew, I went back to, and I can't remember the term he used, like in the very first chapter that we read.
Yeah.
When he talked about the people that were sort of like disinterested, like that. Do you remember that, Josh? What the term you remember? You said people that are going to bring change can't be like this. We need,
Unbelievable gullibility. No, that wasn't it.
no. It was like the very first.
Soft-minded persons.
There you go. Soft-minded people.
Yeah.
Right, a tough mind, tender heart. Yeah, I remember that.
Where he kept hitting that over and over and over again. So I want to dig down into getting into section 1 and kind of what he's starting to unpack here. And he's talking about in section 1 here, the idea of that death on the seashore, and really unpacking Israel as its representation of evil that has been left for dead on the seashore, didn't make it across the sea. At the bottom of what my book would be, page 78, Egypt symbolized evil in the form of humiliating oppression, ungodly exploitation, and crushing domination. And the Israelites symbolized goodness in the form of devotion and dedication to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. A couple sentences later, Pharaoh stubbornly refused to respond to the cry of Moses, even when plague after plague threatened his domain. But this is the sentence that I want to highlight and for us to spend some time unpacking. This tells us something about evil that we must never forget. And here it is. Namely, that evil is recalcitrant and determined, and evil never voluntarily relinquishes its hold short of a persistent, almost fanatical resistance. But there is a checkpoint in the universe. Evil cannot permanently organize itself. So let's break that down a little bit. Evil is something that will pursue. Evil in its hard-heartedness and as a personification, like the Egyptians, like the Pharaoh and its hard-heartedness. Evil is something that is going to pursue goodness. It is going to, in his words, come in the form of humiliating oppression, ungodly exploitation, crushing domination, etc. And it is going to pursue goodness and devotion and dedication to God. It's going to pursue. Evil is recalcitrant and determined, and will never voluntarily relinquish its hold short of a persistent, almost fanatical resistance. But there is a checkpoint in the universe. Evil cannot permanently organize itself. How might we understand what King means by that? How might we understand that even in our own contemporary lives?
I mean, I agree with that. And I think it's because of the nature of any kind of system. Think about political system that's based on evil. I mean, the person at the top, when you get to the top, what's the very first thing you do? You know, you try and secure your place at the top by getting rid of anybody that would challenge you. You know what I mean? And so the system, I think, collapses under its own weight. And if you think of slavery as like an evil economic system, you know, or something like that, I mean, because it was, you had to have people that supplied the slaves, people that brokered them, people that, you know, all the little pieces that go into. If that you know, all it takes is for some of the people there in that system to realize they don't want to be a part of that anymore, and then that collapses as well. I don't know if I'm making sense, but it seems like that is the case.
Yeah, I think going back to the thing you said earlier, short and sweet, was evil collapses in on itself.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's another way of saying that evil cannot permanently organize itself. I mean, imagine evil as a corporation, right? And or even historically as an empire.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that may have a good run, but not an everlasting run. Right. And why is that? I don't think that King is going to address why evil may collapse in on itself and why it's not an everlasting run and why it can't permanently organize itself. But I'm asking you, why do you think that evil cannot permanently organize itself? Why do you think that?
I think because to organize yourself, there has to be a logic, a framework, and logic, and people would have to believe in that. And that to me almost seems contradictory to human nature. If something is logical to you, then you still have the power of reason, and you would reason that that system is evil, and you wouldn't want to be a part of it, assuming that you still have choice.
Okay. What else?
Yeah.
Who else?
Well, I think you have to have a lot of faith to believe that evil won't triumph, because evil never goes away, at least in our lifetimes. There are different variations of it and different manifestations of it, but it always seems to be out there in some form or other.
Okay. What else? Why does evil collapse on itself?
Because God's in charge of the universe?
I'm going to say, all right, tease it out. Play that one out. What does the God corporation, how is the God corporation structured differently than the evil corporation? What makes that corporation differently?
People are happy to go there and work.
Keep going. Soft answer. Give me something real.
Well, in John's response about it collapsing in on itself,
Uh-huh.
when you're in power for evil, it begin below you to get disgruntled. They want the power. They're fighting your power, and then it collapses.
Ah, good. Now she's talking about the evil corporation and why it begins to it can't permanently organize itself and it begins to collapse in on itself. Now flip the script on it. Why is the God corporation different from the evil one? What kind of corporation is Jesus building, so to speak?
A community.
Keep going.
It's not I see the evil corporation, if we're going to look at it that way. I see the evil corporation is me, all individual. I can do everything. The God corporation is we're a community that can fight this together, sort of.
Mhm.
Less of an individual thing, not about yourself. It's about how can we help each other. And the evil has no intention of helping all the little evil things together.
I think it can disguise itself that way. I think evil has a way of manipulating itself, and I think people who use evil and wield evil disguise it. Just pull up Star Wars, right? The Emperor telling Anakin, oh, well, use the dark side of the Force. We can save Padme. We can do all these wonderful things. Just join us. Look, Darth Vader, bring over your son Luke. We can do all these things. Join us. Right? Evil can be manipulative and allure us to do these great and wonderful things, right? But there's a shallowness there. There's no depth. There's a very different kind of depth and strength and that has a permanence within the quote unquote God corporation. I want to draw a reference to another movie. I'm sorry. Many of you may have seen this movie called Gladiator. It starred Russell Crowe. If you had seen that movie, and the antagonist in the movie was Commodus, and he was played by Joaquin Phoenix. And early in the film, the emperor had come to the encampment where Russell Crowe's character had just won this great battle, and Commodus had shown up to take all the glory, and he was kind of the heir apparent. And Maximus, Russell Crowe's character, was going to end up being the heir apparent. It was going to end up passing over Commodus, and the emperor is now telling Commodus, "Hey, I'm going to be given the crown to Russell Crowe and not you." And Commodus, Joaquin Phoenix, is hurt, and he says to the emperor, he said, "You wrote me once listing the four chief virtues: wisdom, justice, fortitude, temperance. And I read this list and I knew that I had none of them. I have other virtues, Father. Ambition, that can be a virtue when it drives us to excel. Resourcefulness, courage, perhaps not on the battlefield, but there are many forms of courage. Devotion to my family, to you. None of my virtues were on your list, even though, even then, it was as if you didn't want me as your son. He rides with an ambition for self, a jealousy of others, a courage that and resourcefulness that drives his excel for his own agenda, that is set apart from what is contrasted with the protagonist, which is Maximus, the Russell Crowe character, who in the SPQR of the Roman history is sought out to serve country, duty, honor amongst the soldiers that he serves. And what he wants to do is finish his term now as a soldier and go home. And there sets up this idea of the evil that collapses in on itself, which foreshadowing in the movie is penultimately what happens. So I think we see King hitting in on something, and the idea and the nature of evil played out with Pharaoh and Egypt, of what doesn't last all the way through. We see the Roman Empire fall, we see slavery fall, we see apartheid in South Africa fall, we see the British Empire begin to fall, we see Alexander the Great's empire fall. What else do we see fall? The Genghis Khan's empire fall. We see what?
Soviet Union.
The Soviet Union fall. I mean, history, we see these various forms of maniacal empires fall. Because, and what is it that has some essence of sustaining power that overrides them all?
Religion.
That operates beyond all of those things.
You have Christ's word, that all will be all right.
Yeah. And where does it thrive, live, move, and have its being?
In the Bible? Is that
Well, in the world. I mean, where do you see it thrive? Where do you see that God's word thrive in the world institutionally? It's never in the form of government. It's never in the form of corporations. It's always in the people.
Religions.
It's not even in religions. It's not even in the institution of the church. Why? The church, we haven't learned anything about the church. We know that people run the church and people sin. Catholic Church, Baptist Church, right now paying out a lot of money. Methodist Church, paying out a lot of money for ways in which it covered up a lot of naughty, bad things. Right? Because people are involved in it, and people sin, and people are prone to do evil things. So even the institutions that are built in the name of Christ, but the essence of what Christ has, the Word of God, it prevails beyond any of the institutions that man would build. That's what has the staying power. And that is what we live and strive to be, which is the kingdom of God. Let's move on to page 80 as we're getting towards section 2 here. He's really hitting up, and he talks a little bit more, and he opens up talking a little bit more about what I would call the pharaohs of his time, of the early 1960s. And he's identifying, the pharaohs that he has identified, whether that's in Asia or Africa. He had said, a few lines down in that opening paragraph, less than 2 decades ago, most of the Asian and African peoples were colonial subjects, dominated politically, exploited economically, segregated and humiliated by foreign powers. For years, they protested against these grave injustices. In nearly every territory in Asia and Africa, a courageous Moses pleaded passionately for the freedom of his people. and goes on towards the end of the next paragraph, talking about, again, the dismantling of some of these empires, et cetera, et cetera. Excuse me. Including in the United States and the dismantling of some of those things that we've seen within the United States and the institution of slavery, et cetera, et cetera. So it's led me to ask the question to y'all, which is based on this idea of, the various Moses is this kind of hypothetical Moses, these people who have risen up to speak truth to power, to say, set my people free throughout time and history, including the ones that King had said, like Gandhi, and the like. What pharaohs might we still be seeing today? Hard-hearted persons who are oppressors, and using his own words, persons who operate in the realm of humiliating oppression, ungodly exploitation, or crushing domination. What might be some of the pharaohs that we are aware of today?
We have Putin, certainly.
I thought of Putin. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, we're swinging for the fences, baby. Let's go big or go home. All right. Well, I mean, yeah, right. As an easy one. Good. All right.
There's probably a bunch of world leaders that are easy to, I mean, North
Absolutely.
Korea, but I'd be more interested in seeing it like if we were able to see some like systems like slavery,
Absolutely.
not a person, but like, systemic racism still institutionalized.
Yeah, I think you're right, John. I think you're right. I think that there are, especially within a democratic process in the United States in particular. However, even all of our processes are still managed by people, even if they're just a large group of people. They're still managed by people. So it may not be one person individually, like Putin in Russia, but there's still groups of people who manage things.
Yep.
And so certain aspects of Congress, whether they're state level, city councils, at the federal level, et cetera, or Supreme Courts, whether they're state level, the United States level, there are groups of people that have these agencies that manage our various systems that have uh, 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 that can have evil embedded within our systems. And I think that's a very important thing to elevate, as well as what I thought you were going to say was it's easy to pull out world leaders. It might take a little bit more investigating to look, especially in the United States, at corporate leaders. Those often go a whole lot more in the dark. They're a whole lot more difficult for me to know companies and corporations that I've never heard of before. I don't even know what they do. I would never have heard of an Enron or, I don't know what the heck that is prior to it getting unfolded, or, the collapse in the early 2000s.
I think even like some of our frameworks, like our legal framework, because it's case law and it's built on precedents and things like that. I think even some of that stuff gets infected. Second Amendment interpretation.
Sure.
And in the face of everything that goes on all the time, can't seem to break out of that and do what's right.
Yeah, I think the invitation here that I want us to sit and resonate with, especially as King has set up this contrast, is to think about who are the Moseses that are pleading for liberation that we should pay attention to, and that maybe we should pay attention to where are these pharaohs that are continuing these systems of oppression and injustice, whether they are individuals like someone like a Putin, or they are a collection of people, or they are systems that have been embedded in our uh, way of life, especially our laws and whatnot.
But that takes us back to what John was saying before about Hannah Arendt and the good German. Are we, again, just complicit within the systems from which we benefit every day when we think about the daily acts that we could identify as having some evil presence, if not intent? I mean, it makes me feel that um, not the blindness of optimism, the blindness of nihilism, the feeling that how can we change something so vast?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's always one of my favorite questions, Matthew. It's always one of my favorite questions. You want to know why?
Tell
Because
me.
I do not believe not a single person in this world is without power. I believe every single person in this world has power and agency. And there is no futility in this world. Uh, I recognize, and I think it's important for all of us to recognize that we all have the ability to affect the pool in which we swim. I may not be able to swim in the pool of Ukraine, but I can affect the pool of Cedar Park because I live in Cedar Park. And you know what? I'm doing the best I can because I live in this pool and it's important to me. So I'm trying to do the best that I can. I live in this pool called Texas, and I'm going to do the best I can because it's primary season and I need to do some research on how to vote. That's the pool I live in, and I can affect the waters of that pool. And it can be overwhelming. So many of Texans, they don't live in the valley where the border is, and therefore it doesn't seem like our pool to swim in. And they're right. There are a lot of issues along the valley that it's not our pool, it's not our immediate pool, but it's still in our neighborhood. And therefore we do have to pay attention. And so there is no futility in that. And that's this other part that I keep keen, and I would never want us to be forgetting. This other part is, um, I think, in accepting the futility of it all is what gives strength to the organizational foundation of evil. Um, that's what gives strength to the Roman Empire. That's what gives strength to, man, what am I going to be able to do against, all the power and the might of all of this? Yeah, I give up. But then I think that was the other thing that you were saying there was the complicity aspect of it. And that's why I think in our corporate prayers of confession, how important it is for us to always do the best that we can to remember that we sin uh, 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 by the ways of our action. We sin by omission and commission. The
Yeah.
things that we commit and the things that we are complicit on, and are the things that we don't do as much as the things that we do. And the invitation is for us to begin thinking about and reflecting about, and what are the ways that we are being complicit that maybe I do need to pay more attention to. I am not necessarily called to be the one to be the Moses on every stupid topic in the world. Um, I'm not gifted to be the Moses on every stupid topic in the world. And I thank God that there are. But when I get an opportunity to vote, I need to make sure that I'm paying attention. Or, you know what? Every one of us has the opportunity to contact our elected officials. That is affecting the pool that you live in. And I love that, there's for me, just not that there's not an essence of futility. I think the systems of evil have bred within a culture that there's nothing you can do, and that the power of of the backhanded, behind the scenes, um, you know, deals and ulterior motives and of elected officials. Yeah, those things happen, but you know what King says? They're going to fall in on themselves, and we gotta keep doing the thing that Christ has called us to do, not to be disconnected, but keep the faith. It's like what I said this morning: manage the fear and keep going. Sorry, little soapbox there.
No, I mean,
Happen.
I don't know. I totally agree. I mean, that's what I was trying to say before.
Yeah.
Like, the evil is a diminishment of what we are capable of, and it's yeah. I think I just felt there was a door open. We were saying like, if it's losing hope, but yeah, we shouldn't discard what we are capable of doing because we know what we are capable of doing and what we are becoming. So I
Yeah.
agree.
I'm recognizing the time, and I want to hit a couple other things. Um, Page 83, boy, I got like super excited on page 83. And I could spend another hour on it. I won't. But I wanted to, and I'm going to jump through a whole bunch because I really wanted to hone in on this Charles Beard quote.
Mm.
What was
So in
on
particular,
page 83?
what's that?
What was on page 83 that you
Sorry.
were?
So I'm coming towards the end of section 2, and now this is kind of the beginning of section 3. But towards the end of section 2, King has this, and I don't want to overlook it. This quote: "Evil in the form of injustice and exploitation shall not survive forever. A Red Sea passage in history ultimately brings the forces of goodness to victory, and the closing of the same water marks the doom and destruction of the forces of evil. All of this reminds us that evil carries the seed of its own destruction. In the long run, right defeated is stronger than evil triumphant." I'm sorry. And then he says, historian Charles Beard, and this is what I want to ask you about. Historian Charles Beard, when asked what major lessons he had learned from history, answered, and I had sent this in the email earlier this afternoon. First, when he was asked major lessons that he had learned from history, he answered, first, whom the gods would destroy, they must first make mad with power. Second, the mills of God grind slowly, yet they grind exceedingly small. Third, the bee fertilizes the flower it robs. Fourth, when it's dark enough, you can see the stars. So let's unpack those 4 as our final parts of discussion for tonight. What the heck is Charles Beard talking about when he says, whom the gods would destroy, they must first make mad with power? What the heck does he mean by that?
I've heard that misquoted. Whom the gods destroy, they first make proud. You know, but I've never seen the actual, straight from the horse's mouth quote here. And the other 3 for me are about hope, right? But this one is more of a reassurance, like, hey, if these people that are, mad with power, don't worry about them. The gods will get to them, in time. But I don't know why the must is in there.
Yeah. Anybody else? How else would you want to attack that first one? Whom the gods would destroy, they must first make mad with power. What kind of mad are they talking about?
Selfishness and blindness and
Yeah.
egocentric, where you only care about your situation and your power and your money and your position, and you don't care about how it affects the rest of the world or the people around you.
Yeah. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, kind of a thing, right? Right. Mad with power is in. I'm sorry, Carla. Go ahead. Were you saying something,
No,
Carla?
no, I'm good.
Yeah, the just drunk with just kind of this, addiction of, I want it all and I want it now. And it doesn't matter who I step on the way. It doesn't matter who gets it in the end. It's all, to serve my purposes. Um, Second, the mills of God grind slowly, yet they grind exceedingly small. All right, who wants to take on that one? The mills of God grind slowly, yet they grind exceedingly small. Anybody ever been to a mill, worked a mill, seen a mill?
My takeaway from that is you're eventually going to get yours, and it ain't going to be good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When it comes, it's coming.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the NRA and the spectacular fall that the longtime NRA leader had this past week. That was
Yeah.
kind of interesting to behold.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can also look at a number of kind of televangelists, a variety of different televangelists who've gotten drunk with power, right? And have been seduced by money that have come along with it, and the fame and the notoriety of that comes along with um, the flattery of being televised and having all this cash come in, and and the affordability of being able to do whatever you want in the name of God because you're righteous and holy, and then things start to come apart, right? And I kept thinking about one of the other things that a quote that is often attributed to King, but uh, King was quoting someone else. The moral arc of the universe is long, um, but it always, oh crap, come on, Josh. The
Bends
moral
towards
arc
justice.
of
Bends towards
justice.
just, yeah.
Yeah.
Say it again, Matthew. Come on, man. Bring me home.
No, bends towards justice.
The moral arc of the universe is long, but it always bends towards justice.
Something like that. Yeah.
Right. So, um, again, this is, and I'll tie back with John's word, this kind of, you know, for me, this is kind of the salve of my day. This is kind of what, this is the kind of thinking that is what enables the contemporary political issues of our day and all of the woes of our day, which is why none of it burdens me and overwhelms me or causes me dismay and despair, because I believe in a day. I have a hope. I understand and know that the that the mills of God grind slowly, but when they do, it will grind it exceedingly small to the point, blow it, and it just blows away. 3,
Turn to dust.
the bee fertilizes the flower it robs. What in the world does he mean about that? I mean, I understand about the bee fertilizing the flower, but with regard to a lesson learned from history, the bee fertilizes the flower it robs is a lesson from
So
history.
I always think of Václav Havel in Czechoslovakia, and how when the Soviets came, and it probably exists in other places, but that's the most famous example, where the Soviets came in, the Russians came in and tried to overlay their power structure over, the Czech society. And instead of, just wilting under it and just becoming automatons, Václav Havel had this idea of living a just life below the surface, and so when the end of the Cold War came, and which didn't exist in other places like East Germany, right, which was a police state and everybody informed on everybody else, right, and some other places, but Czech Republic, ultimately the Czech Republic was one of the first post-Soviet satellites that immediately began to reflourish.
Okay.
So I mean, I get that is like the bee comes and robs you, but it also fertilizes.
Oh, okay. I
I kind of
got you.
see, I kind of see these 4 points as connected. They move from one to the next. And so the gods would destroy those made mad with power. The class I'm teaching the Iliad now. So this is true. Like people who are made mad with power feel that they are gods, and the gods are fickle, and they enjoy destroying them, and the mills of God growing slowly. So the bee fertilizes the flower it robs means that if we are just dust, who are we? What are we? What has been taken from us? And what has been given in return? You feel as if you're just dust in the wind. I'm quoting something maybe.
Kansas, baby, come on.
Maybe some of us get that, but the bee so the bee is something more than a bee. It's something has been taken from us as our place in history. Maybe we're just
But it also leaves some essence of life-giving, right?
that
It
we
doesn't
don't
take
always
everything from us. It may
No.
steal from us, but it doesn't take everything from us.
But we don't always think of it that way.
Yeah.
And
the bee's not trying to fertilize, it's trying to rob.
I think it's something of a little of both, perhaps, too.
Okay.
Well, and sometimes great movements are born out of a single tragedy.
Yeah.
And
I think you see that with Joseph as well, right? The story of
Mm.
Joseph and his
Yes.
tragedy in Genesis. And it's I love the way in which that story culminates, that after all of these horrible deeds that his brothers had committed to him, and the evil that they had done to him and intended to him, all these many years later, he was in a position of authority and power to be able to extend salvation, help, and offer aid during a time of critical famine, and to issue to be the instigator of reconciliation, and says to them, the things that you had meant for evil, God has redeemed for good. And so so out of all of the evil for which has been done to me, it has borne fruit of this good. This good has been born out of it all. That brings up fourth, when it is dark enough, you can see the stars. And that one, I have that one, to me, is troublesome. I get the idea, the visual aspect of that. I think that one for me is troublesome, especially for people who have a variety of different physical or sexual abuses that might be triggering, in the sense that you have to go through darkness in order to see the stars, or for those who didn't have the opportunity to see the light in those depths and those darkest of times, and in their recovery have had the challenge of seeing that and coming out and coming through. But
that's the premise of addiction recovery programs, right? When
right.
when you've come to the very bottom of all the bad things that can happen in your life, then
Right.
you only have one way to go, and that's
Right.
to recover.
But I get the essence of what he's trying to identify here. And I think I said that in my sermon this morning. You know, there are no street lamps in the middle of the ocean in the middle of the storm, right? I mean, but you know, that really underscores the power of the Gospel of John, first chapter, the light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. And I've been in a variety of different ethnic cultures, whether in Mexico, in the Middle East, or in South Africa, who've translated that passage a little differently. Maybe not authentically to the Hebrew or to the Greek, but and the darkness did not overcome it. The darkness will not overcome it. The darkness shall not overcome it. This idea of the power of the light, and that the light wins every time, and every time the light wins, and that the light, you know, is that there is this idea of that the hope of Christ, the light of Christ, is with us always, and I think that's this point that he's making there. So, okay, I need to bring us to an end on all that, and thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I'm sorry that we didn't get to really unpack section 3, and but I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation and have thoroughly enjoyed the last 2 months walking through these chapters. I know it's a little bit more heady and dense than just reading one of old Josh's fuddy-duddy sermons, and but I'm not the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King either. So maybe 60 years from now, you know, but not right now. So that being said, thank you for your patience. Thank you for committing to hanging in there and your growth. And I want to encourage you. I am excited about our next one, Confessing Our Faith. And I will be, want to pull up I sent you the handout for what our, let me pull up the handout. Let's see, for what we're doing next week with this. And that is the introduction and chapter 1. And whether you have or don't have the book yet, I will scan and send you the introduction and chapter 1 in case this doesn't show up on your doorstep in the coming week. It'll give you a chance to read it and kind of have a sampler for next week. I'm also going to be inviting my colleagues who serve smaller churches who don't often have the opportunity to do midweek or outside of Sunday morning offerings.
Yep.
So there might be some other churches. I don't know whether they will or won't, but I'm going to invite some other churches. If they would like to join us, they're welcome to do so. Again, I don't know whether they'll take us up on it or not, but I'll extend the offer. So, but I'm excited about it because this is certainly a little bit more of my comfort zone, and it's a little, it's a lot easier to read, I think. It's a different kind of read, but it's an easier read than what we've been navigating through. So,
But you know, I'd say Dr. King is still a voice to hear today.
yes,
He is still a guiding star in a lot of ways for our world, for better and for worse. I mean, I feel like some of the things he talks about for me in reading this book, it could have been written yesterday. You know, I think the spirit of
yes,
that.
and that's why, I mean,
Immutable
thank you,
truth.
Matt. I mean, Matthew, that's exactly why I selected this book. Was 60 years later, in what ways is this not still relevant for us today? And I believe it still bears a lot of relevance for us today because we're still encountering a number of things that we are wrestling with maybe not the same way, but no less important, that if the proclamation of God's word is to be true, should be able to stand beyond time. And I may have said some things today that might or might not, or any given Sunday, have some time essence to it, some timestamp to it. But the essence of what I'm saying on any given Sunday morning should be able to have some and bear some fruit 60 years from now, as much as they do today. So, any questions for me before as we go to wrap up, or any final thoughts, any parting thoughts? Fabtabuloso. One last time, who would like to use that King prayer to close us out?
No one else wants to, I can.
It's all you, Elder John.
All right, my man. Please join me in prayer. God, we thank you for the inspiration of Jesus. Grant that we will love you with all our hearts, souls, and minds, and love our neighbors as we love ourselves, even our enemy neighbors. And we ask you, God, in these days of emotional tension, when the problems of the world are gigantic in extent and chaotic in detail, to be with us in our going out and our coming in our rising up and in our lying down, in our moments of joy and in our moments of sorrow, until the day when there shall be no sunset and no dawn. Amen.
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 Fare thee well, everybody. Behave yourself and
Hey,
serve
Josh,
God.
I